All right, we are live from
All
my
right.
living room and James's living room and probably Skip's, I don't know, shed. I don't know.
In the basement.
Basement.
Stunning. It's
He's
fancy
got a man
stuff.
cave.
Thank you.
Yeah, Skip's basement's awesome, man. He's got like power tools and shit in there.
Yeah, really.
It's my office, so yeah, I've got my office and then my workshop.
Living the life. Boy, Shane would be so jealous right now.
Yes, he would.
All right, guys. So for everyone that's watching live or on the delay, we are going to run through three big high-risk days that we've had in the past few years. May 15th, 2003, which was a Texas Panhandle high risk, the last Texas Panhandle high risk we've had. Uh, April 26th, 2009, which I think a lot of people will remember that, it's pretty recent, was a kind of a big high risk bust. I mean, yeah, there was a tornado, but it was a very weird day, as James Gustina will tell us about. And then also, we will be revisiting the night of Greensburg, May 4th, 2007, to look at that setup in more detail. We're also going to be seeing a lot of video that James has put together for us. So, James, I guess take it away when you want to, and what do you got for us?
All right, so we're going to start the screen share here. So the first day we're going to be looking at is April 26th, 2009. It's big high-risk day. So it's probably like one of the last, really big high-risk days out there on the high plains of Oklahoma. You can see they're high risk over, most of the western prairies of Oklahoma and moderate all the way from northern Kansas down into central Texas. And this day, it never, most people know who chased it, or if you don't, you've probably heard of chasers who absolutely despise this day. And it was, it was probably going to be a big day. The winds looked great. You can see here you have a really, really big trough over the western continental United States, and almost due southerly, really strong low-level winds at 850 millibars, 50 knots over here, drawing moisture up from the Gulf and northern Mexico, and really, really potent-looking day. But the killer of this day, I mean, there were multitudes of reasons, but just looking at the sounding at 12Z from Norman, you can see this profile is completely saturated from the surface all the way up to about like 730 millibars. And while over here the winds look great, you got really nice veering winds with height, kind of going at winds backing at the surface to the southeast, and almost due westerly winds once you get up to 500. But then this profile just kills it, and you have a really small inversion here, right around 700 millibars, and a really skinny thermal profile and weak hydrolapse around the mid-levels. And so if you go to mesoanalysis and you just take a look at this day, and just watching the radar, you can see as we kind of step forward from the night before, there's a bit of convection lingering in the panhandles, and then as of about 15:30 Z, which would have been roughly 11 o'clock, there's already convection firing in southwest Oklahoma down here ahead of the dry line, which would stay further west out here in the eastern panhandle. And up here, there was a stationary front kind of draped across near the surface low. And as you can see right here, storms just kind of go up all at once. It's a big blobby mess by 16:30. And they just keep moving to north. And eventually, there would be some isolated cells further back towards the dry line that would produce, one of them would produce the only big tornado of the day near Roll. That was a nice big stovepipe, kind of beefy looking. But then the rest of these storms were just kind of grungy mess. There's a huge line up here in Kansas. And this
Hey
day
James,
really
is
left
it
a,
possible to zoom in on that a little bit? I don't know, like a control mouse wheel or something
yeah.
to roll into that map. It's a little small on the stream screen.
Yeah, it's really funny because SBC usually you can kind of get those different areas that will zoom in on the area, which surprised this day wasn't one of them, but
Let me see if I can. Is that close enough, you think?
Yeah, it's better.
yeah, it's a
Okay.
lot better.
And so right here you can see there's already that big line up in Kansas, and you've got maybe a few trailing supercells back down here along the dry line, but the big storm of the day was actually a few steps back, if I can get to it.
Of course, now we made it hard to navigate, didn't we?
Yeah, it's on the Kansas. This storm right here this is probably roughly border of Ellis and Roger Mills counties, right around here. this storm right in here would go on to produce the Roll, Oklahoma tornado, which was this big monster right. See if I can find it. Right here. And this is from Chris Sanner, who was west of Roll at the time. It's kind of, as you can see, really big, kind of grungy supercell too. Most of the storms this day were really, really kind of close to the line of HP and Classic. You see a big wall cloud there, cut back in here, and yeah, here's the forming tornado, and it'll be back off to the right here, and then you can see the rain shaft in the forward flank right here, and the RFD cut and the rear flank gust front overhead. Yep, and there's the big stovepipe. And this tornado didn't really do much damage that I was able to find, but stayed on the ground for a decent amount of time and put out a pretty decent show for the chasers that managed to get on this storm.
If I remember correctly, I believe it did hit like a couple of trailer houses down in the river valley.
Yeah, it hit. It kind of rode into the Canadian River Valley for maybe about, like, I don't know, a mile and a half, and when it came back up, I think there were maybe 3 or 4 trailers that got hit, and that was the full extent of it.
The only bad place to chase in western Oklahoma is the Canadian River Valley, which conveniently this tornado decided it's going to go right through the river valley.
Yep.
So it was really hard to get really close to that tornado.
That's it. One of the only other videos that I could find that were really good from this tornado was the TVN video where they, I think, nearly drove into it or did get in the outer circulation, and just a lot of the roads, once you get between Arnett and I believe it's Cheyenne, going through Black Kettle National Grassland, the roads, once you get close to the river, really do kind of, they get windy. They're not straight or gridded or anything. They turn to mud real quick if you get away from major highways. It's a really tricky place to chase in, just like in the Panhandle. If you go into the Canadian River Valley, it's the same story.
Yep, I'm too familiar with that crap.
Now,
okay. Interesting enough, go to the satellite feed. I remember I was looking at this earlier with you, and it's really interesting because if you watch the satellite, there's only a small sliver of actual clear area where that storm kind of rode. You can see that area. When you point out the storm, it's there in western Oklahoma. You'll be able to see it kind of blow up right about there. And you see this just like wedge between 2 precip areas. One is right along the front, the other one is the morning stuff. So that was probably the only sliver of the warm sector that really got destabilized, through the afternoon. Everywhere else was just kind of soggy down. It just didn't happen.
And that's kind of the biggest thing with this day too is down here. If you go back a few steps, like earlier in the day, I think this is about 14Z, so just after sunrise, maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours after sunrise. This entire area down here where storms would likely form during the day still had a decent amount of, cirrostratus and some convective debris left over from the storms of the day before. And, you had, the little Q field back here in the dry line sitting right here just coming off the cap rock. And the only clearing area you're going to get is right ahead of this storm right here. It goes riding up, still clear up here, clear, and then back. It's just still kind of a junky mess over here, and back here the forcing's too strong.
Yeah.
And
what time stamp is that right there? I'm sorry.
That would be 18Z. So this was an early
That's
show.
still early. Yeah, that's still early. I think right there, you see, okay, right there, stop. You can see that part in western Oklahoma. That's the only place that really destabilized that day, was that clear area. And then I believe the storm that produced the tornado is just now fired in the eastern panhandle right there. And that's the storm, I believe, that will go on, let's see.
Yep.
Well, I think it kind of backbills down south, and that's kind of what helped it. So, yeah, you can see right there, there's not much of a clear area to work with, and that's probably the only good instability there was that day.
And down here, you can see storms still firing off. It was just kind of there was a Q field all the way down here. There were storms firing all up and down this little line right here from about Enid down to Hollis, and everywhere in between got kind of worked over. And same story back here closer to the front, just billowing convection all day, really linear look to it as it was going up. You see it's kind of straight, kind of just not nice looking, and there's only maybe 1 or 2 isolated decent looking cells all day. So that really it's really interesting too to look at. I pulled up the wind profiler for this day. I mean, the winds, like towards the end of the day, looked really good. I mean, you had 45 knot winds just off the surface, so about 16, or not just off the surface, a little bit higher in the boundary layer, about 1,600 feet, and 50 knots closer to 850 millibars out of the due south, and winds kind of veering slowly with height and getting stronger. Yet it wasn't enough because the forcing along this front back here was too strong, and then so much moisture and precipitation loading was occurring within all of those storms that it kind of really made it hard for anything to get going, and whatever did get going was just sandwiched in between right here. So interesting day, and a day that a lot of people really hate to think about. It's kind of like April 17th, 2013, before that day even happened. It was
I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why everyone hates this. Because go back to SBC. Go back a day before on this SBC page, if you could.
Yep.
The severe weather thing. Because the day before looked like a somewhat promising day. I chased that day. It was like, I believe it was a moderate risk out in the Eastern Panhandle, so it looked like a pretty decent day, but nothing happened. I mean, there was a couple of supercells. They looked all right, but they didn't produce. So everyone was like, okay, well, we didn't score this day. Well, we got the big day tomorrow. We should be fine. And lo and behold, morning precip ruined the whole day, unless you were on that storm. I happened to be on the wrong side, or on the wrong highway across the river. I forgot what the highways are in western Oklahoma, but the tornado crossed the one that's further west. I was on the one that's just down the east a little bit near Camargo. So screw that day for me. Screw that day, totally.
Skip, did you chase this day as well, or?
Yeah, I was in a caravan with Jesse Risley and a couple of those other guys from Illinois, and we played down the line. We were down the dry line further. I think we got into Texas briefly, but yeah, we were south of the roll storm. So it was a big bust for me, and probably one of the last times. That's probably the last time I caravaned with anybody again, because I think we were just kind of a headless snake on that chase. But one thing that really interests me about that roll tornado is from that southern vantage point that you showed, and Brad Goddard has a good still of it. It almost looks like the tornado forms. And it's hard to see in this angle here, but it almost looks like the tornado is like on the apex of the RFD gust front. So if you go back, like you can see the RFD clear slot a little bit earlier on in the video, and it almost looks like it's forming like on the forward edge of that. So whereas I would expect it to be more to the left on kind of the north end of the RFD clear slot, but I don't know. Maybe it's cycling already, and that's the old RFD. I don't know.
It very well might be.
It seems like it was really far east and ahead of that clear slot.
Yeah, it was, because a clear slot, I think, back here, if I go back a little bit, yeah, like here's the tornado cyclone right here in the wall cloud. RFD cuts right here. You just and you can see the wrap around it. It kind of goes whoop and then back around. But then in the next shot, when they are looking at it from the south, tornadoes forming right here. The RFD is all the way back over here. This updraft base is huge, and then you've got your forward flank gust front up over here, and the precip core back this way. And the tornado did kind of form in a wonky spot, and if you weren't paying attention, especially if you got caught in the valley, you'd be in a really interesting or bad spot depending on how you look at it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is really interesting. I didn't even notice that. Where the RFD it's way back there.
Way over here.
Compared to where the tornado is. Like right there, you got the tornado. I don't even see the RFD in the base. So imagine if that thing had wrapped around like a normal, like classic tornado that we see. I mean, that could have very well been a very strong and very large tornado if it had kind of formed a more classic way.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. That storm base was huge. I mean, I remember we were 20, 30 miles east of it, and we were still underneath the thing. We couldn't see the tornado because, just the poor contrast. I mean, you could tell there's not much good contrast. This is probably the best vantage point I've seen of that tornado, because everyone else is further, I believe, still further west on the highway, looking back towards the east. And I guess I think the only way you got a really clear shot of that is if you were directly west of that in the river valley. I'm sure everyone remembers Storm Chasers, the show on Discovery. Tim Samaras chased that storm. They got really good footage of that. I remember that. They were going down in the valley after it, but they got stopped by some debris. But yeah, I remember that. footage of theirs.
Yeah, it was a day that I think it was a difficult forecast to expect. Like you on high risk days, the margin for error, like there's not you can't mess it up because a lot of the times in high risk areas, there's like, there will be 4 or 5 supercells. Say like if it's a high plains high risk out there, towards Woodward, Dodge City, that area, there will be maybe 4 or 5 supercells that produce tornadoes, and then there's just gonna be that one storm that produces like that amazing, great looking tornado, and getting caught out there, especially if you get caught in bad road options, like Ellis County is just a web of awfulness, and if you don't pinpoint forecast it, you end up getting left for dead because you can't go stair stepping back up through other supercells that are maybe producing rain wrap tornadoes, maybe not, who knows, big hail. It High risk days do present a much bigger obstacle than you would probably think.
Yeah, I think the common misconception about high risk is high tornado count, but uh, in reality, it's not. It usually means the high risk thing mostly is for public safety, meaning that there's a very high risk for severe weather. I believe, Skip, did you just send that picture?
Yeah, that was Goddard's view. It shows the structure and the contrast pretty well in that tornado.
Oh, okay, hold on. I'll just switch that over to me real quick so you guys can see it. But yeah, high risk days are not easy to chase, and yeah, there it is. Yeah, that is. Oh man, yeah. Look at where the RFD is compared to that thing. Um, yeah, that is very odd positioning for that tornado. Yeah, you would expect it to be way further, like almost on the other side of the highway still, but um, that's very interesting. I've never, I've never even noticed that about that storm.
Yeah, and it kind of reminds me of when the storm does kind of a meso handoff. You've kind of got that big occluded RFD cut there to the left. The Pilger storm kind of did that too. The Wakefield tornado formed way out to the east of where that RFD clear slot was, and I think that was the new meso being handed off before you had a real clear slot form. And you can see that sometimes. Sometimes you get a nice tornado before there's a well-defined clear slot. There's RFD at the surface, but sometimes I think the parameters are there, especially like the low-level helicity where you get a tornado before you get a big clear slot.
Yeah, and I just looked it up real quick. April 25th, the day before, was indeed a moderate risk in western Oklahoma, almost the same exact spot as the high risk. So that's kind of what everyone I think was really hoping to get, I believe. But you know what? Sometimes it just doesn't work out.
Nope.
Unless you were really keen and stuck really close to that dry line, which usually it's not a good thing to do, is to stick close to the dry line. But that day it paid off. So.
Yep. It especially a lot. I don't want to say people got lucky because a lot of it I think came to really good forecasting by some people, but a lot of that day too was just it was a crapshoot. I mean, there was
a lot of convergence too, if I remember right. There was a lot of chasers on that one storm.
Yep. There were.
What are we looking at there? Watches, Piers, of that day.
Yeah, I'm looking at the MD once the roll tornado touchdown. It's kind of this one is just kind of talking about the threat continuing for the tornado watch, and they were still talking about tornado potential increasing with more supercells coming out of southwest Oklahoma that are moving northeastward into west central Oklahoma in the next couple hours, and they also expected more development in the Texas Panhandle along the dry line with embedded supercells, but it just didn't quite play out for one reason or another, mainly because I think the environment had been so horribly worked over, and this kind of says it right here, nearly uncapped air mass, which means, all that stuff that was going up in southwest Oklahoma along the dry line in North Texas was probably just, it was all going up at once after that first round of convection, and there was no way it was going to just stay discrete as it moved into Oklahoma where there were lower spreads. Probably at this point, I'm pretty sure the jet streak had started around the base of the trough at this point at 0Z. yeah, you can see it. You can see it exiting here over the Texas Panhandle. It's force, really dynamic forcing was probably increasing at this point at 0Z. So shortly before that, it was probably once that Roll Oklahoma tornado dissipated and that supercell moved off, there was probably not that great of a chance in retrospect that this setup would put out anything more, down here in west central Oklahoma.
Yep. That that day just it was a frustrating day. Luckily, early in my career, so I kind of expected failure because it was just like my second year chasing. So um, I guess we can move on from there to the next day. Skip, any final thoughts on that day? Like lessons learned, I suppose. um,
Skip, y'all good?
yeah. Are you frozen, Skip? You must be.
Sorry, my browser was screwing up on me, wouldn't let me unmute my mic. Yeah, lessons learned for me was to basically, pick a good target and stick with it. That was one of my lessons learned from my chase. Actually, I could pull up my chase log real quick and see what I actually wrote for lessons learned. But yeah, that was a really devastating bust for me. And my biggest lesson was to not caravan. To not caravan with a lot of other chasers, just because you lose your focus, you lose your organization. Pick your own target and make your own chase. And I had originally targeted the Woodward area originally, but we wound up just going down 40 west instead of making that run north like we should have, just because I was caught in this caravan. So
Yeah, it was definitely one of the harder days. Especially, it was just one of those days that when it failed, it was just kind of crushing. You had big expectations, season kind of opening up with a even bigger bang going into May, just didn't materialize, and kind of portended what would come later in 2009, where it was just, all the really good storms were kind of spread to the winds around the fringes of the alley. You had that Wyoming day in June, a bunch of other random June days further east. It was just kind of a weird year. All right, so
Some
moving
might
on.
say terrible year.
Yeah, it was up until last 2 seasons. I'd say it was probably the worst year in the past 10 years.
Mm-hmm. All right, so here we go. May 4, 2007. I believe everybody knows this day. This would be the day Greensburg got hit. Very devastating, very large, very powerful tornado, and probably one of the last very large and violent tornadoes that we've seen on the high plains, or I guess you could say the southern plains, at night. I don't know. I really, off the top of my head, I couldn't think of any other, big tornadoes we had overnight. There's usually one or two sporadic here and there, but we usually don't get these kind of massive tornadoes this late in the day. So this is kind of an interesting write-up. So go ahead, take it away, James.
It was so Greensburg, had been popping out. It had been popping up for a while in the models. Really, really strong negatively tilted trough coming on shore here. This is a 12Z plot. You had a jet streak rounding the base of the trough coming through, Four Corners region on the plains. You had really, really deep, the models didn't show this so well, at least the ruck didn't, that really deep moisture, it didn't show up earlier in the day. Out here, when the dryland started mixing.
Uh-oh. Uh-oh, Skip. We lost him.
Oh.
Yeah.
It happens. Are you back?
We're gonna have to wing it or do it, or do our own analysis here. Yeah, I was just looking at this. Maybe James can talk about it when he comes back. But one thing I remember from the Greensburg day was the rock analysis was off majorly. The dew points, it had the dry line way too far east. And
I remember that.
And the tornado actually formed like what should have been behind the dry line, just because the ruck was so far off, and that bit us on that chase. We thought the Great Bend area in south was going to be too dry, and that wasn't the case. And so
Do you
yeah.
guys, do you guys hear me okay?
Yep, you're back.
We got
Okay. Yes, I actually, Skip is mentioning that. I was just pulling up the ruck analysis for that day. I'm pretty sure this is the level of free convection chart. And the problem with the ruck is it was mixing all this dry air way further east than it was showing up on the surface ops. Because right now, so this is 22Z. The ruck has, this is Wichita right here. This is basically I-35. It had dry air advecting all the way east to about the 35 corridor, and the dry line just pushing off to the east and kind of, sagging to the southwest further down here. On the surface ops, it doesn't really show this. The dry line's roughly about right here, just east of Dodge City. You have, 70-degree dew points here, all in western Oklahoma, kind of upper 50s, mixed in with a lot of low 60s, even a 70 or two tossed in here. Really deep moisture, decent spreads, and earlier in the day, the only storm before this was actually the storm that produced the Arnett, Oklahoma tornado, which was a really nice-looking, skinny rope, I guess you could say, and this is Steve Miller's video from that day. And the tornado it was the only storm that went up during the daytime on the southern plains, and it produced this beauty. And you can see the swirl going, and out there by Arnett, once you get north of the Canadian River, it's really, really nice chase country, really flat, open prairie, not many trees anymore.
Oh, Lord.
You can see it touching down there. It went just west of Arnett, if I'm remembering it correctly.
Yeah, and while you guys watch this, we'll be looking at the satellite here pretty soon. You're going to notice on satellite, it's crazy. It was the only storm that ever popped up, in the plains until right around dusk, I think, further south. Look at that structure, man. That's awesome. But, yeah, it was the only storm that blew up in the warm sector for a couple of hours before the stuff down south started going up. So, I guess a lot of people probably got this tornado. It's one of the prettiest tornadoes we've had in the last decade of chasing. Definitely a really nice tube. James, if you want to skip ahead to where it's just the perfect tube, because that's, right there where it's just a nice tube, and then eventually the sun illuminates the bottom half of it. So if you do watch this video, I recommend you go watch Steve Miller's video of this, because it is one of the best of that day. They get a little panicky because the sirens, you don't hear them sounding in Arnett, and that tornado just kind of creeps closer and closer to Arnett. But yeah, definitely, this was a very, very beautiful tornado in the Southern Plains, in a very easy to chase, in my opinion, area of Oklahoma. So.
Really, once you get north of the Canadian River Valley there in Ellis County, Arnett and areas north and off to the west are just absolutely perfect, pristine chasing. And it's really kind of a shame, and you can see there kind of double wall structure there in the lower part of this tornado. It really is a shame because the high plains, this drought has made it extremely hard, and it's extremely hard to get pretty tornadoes like this during the meat of the season. April, May, June, hell, even like August, September, October, out this way, mainly just because you have a dry line that'll start, almost over Woodward and then be east of the metro area by late afternoon, early evening. And you can see here the tornado's kind of roping out and getting a little bit smaller and getting close to being fully occluded. Can I skip ahead a bit? Yep, and it's completely roping out. It's almost translucent. It's a really, really pretty tornado. And honestly, I don't think I'm not sure how many people were on this tornado and then went further north to hop on the Greensburg storm when it formed up near Buffalo, but honestly, if I was watching this tornado, I would have never thought that, in about 4 hours that one of the biggest tornadoes the High Plains have ever seen was about to touch down, and that was this monster. So Greensburg, most of you probably know, but if you don't, it was a nighttime event which this far west on the plains tends to be extremely rare because you'll have the boundary layer decouples. Essentially, it stabilizes, making it hard for surface-based convection, which in turn makes it difficult for, tornado formation after dark. A lot of times the dry line will quickly retreat west during the nighttime hours on the plains. Your main forcing mechanism will go away, and storms will likely congeal as the system moves through. But in this case, a warm front was draped over central Kansas, and the dry line was kind of bulging outwards and kind of arcing and making a very narrow triple point. And between this area was Greensburg, Buffalo, Protection, and that first tornado touchdown near Protection, which is close to the Oklahoma border, north of Buffalo, and that storm continued off to the north. It was kind of a supercell, kind of a clustery mess with, and on the radar images you can see it's a big cluster and then just a really menacing-looking hook hanging off the south side of it as it came through Greensburg. It would then go on to produce the Maxville tornado, which was also a really large wedge, actually even bigger than the Greensburg tornado, while the Greensburg tornado was roping out and curling back around as it occluded with the RFD pushing it as the storm continued moving north. It almost looked like the Greensburg tornado would come back around and hit the town, but thankfully it roped out as it curled back around the RFD and missed as the storm started producing a Maxwell tornado to the north. So right here.
Yeah, it's gonna be hard to see it in this video because it's a little jumpy on the stream, but every now and then you get a good lightning flash. You can catch the walls of that tornado. I believe this is Dan Robinson's video on YouTube. I recommend going and watching that. Oh, there it is.
And there's
lightning flash. Yeah, it was quite a beast to behold, and I don't know about you guys, but I kind of make it a habit if I'm in southern Kansas. I usually kind of stop in Greensburg and throw my money into the town as much as I can.
Yeah, and Greensburg has really made a kind of off topic a little bit, but Greensburg really did make a great recovery, and it's nice to see the town doing decently well because before this the town had been dwindling in size, and in a way the tornado actually helped kind of remake the town. Oh, that was a really good flash. I'm gonna back that up a bit.
I've got a really, really messed up story about Greensburg, and it has to do with this old lady we met there. We were, what's the name of that grocery store that everybody stops at? I forgot the name of it, damn it. It's the big, grocery store / gas station. I think everyone knows exactly what I'm talking about.
I know what you mean.
Yeah, we were waiting on a day. I think it was sometime last year, and this old lady comes out and she's like, "Are you guys storm chasers?" And we're like, "Well, yes, ma'am. We're out here watching storms." And she's like, "Was there going to be any tornadoes?" I'm like, "Well, there might be. That's why we're kind of here." And she's like, I swear to God, word for word, she's like, "Good. I hope another tornado wipes this town off the map." And I'm like, "What? Like, really?" And oh man, it was just. I couldn't laugh at that. I was just like, man, what's going like?
That's just unnecessary.
Yeah, well, you know what, and that's it. I think and I don't know this firsthand, but I think when you get a big, massive tornado that, it rips through a town, it does a lot of damage and stuff. It really changes the mindset of the people. I mean, it really does in the entire population. We had another similar eerie thing that happened. When we visited Joplin a year later on the down day, we were out there just kind of observing all the damage and stuff a year later, and everyone's driving down the road, and they are not looking on either side of the road. They're looking straight ahead. They don't care that we're near the road. We're looking at stuff. They just, tunnel vision, right down the road. They did not look on either direction. We were just a block away from the hospital, and man, I don't know. It does stuff to people. It's a deep psychological issue, I know, but it's when you haven't been in that position, it's kind of strange. You don't know what to do. You don't know how to act. You're just like, okay, hope you have a good day, kind of deal. So
yeah, and I think and Greensburg really was not only traumatic for the people that lived there, but a lot of the chasers that were the first ones to make it into Greensburg, before most of the emergency crews showed up. I mean, it was a really traumatizing experience because you're pulling people out of rubble. There were horrible injuries. It was one of probably the strongest tornadoes that had occurred in over maybe since the Moore tornado. And it kind of it people had we hadn't seen, most chasers hadn't seen anything like that before, and it really kind of threw them off, and it really kind of it haunts a lot of people to this day. Some of the stuff they saw going into Greensburg, it really was the aftermath of the tornado really overshadows this event, and for good reason, because this storm killed probably, I think, 15 people, killed a deputy outside of Maxville with the Maxville tornado that formed immediately after the Greensburg tornado. The Greensburg tornado killed 9 or 10, and it sat over the town for several minutes, and it's not something you recover from easily. And coming across damage as a chaser really is if you have never experienced it before, it's something that you'll sadly never forget, and it really is hard to overcome later on. And this storm, in a lot of ways it was exceptional, but in a lot of ways it was horrible, and it was just a product of how that event went. Kind of jumping back into the meteorology side of things, though, this is the storm. This is the only supercell that was around, with decent amounts of daylight to work with. This is the storm that produced the Arnett tornado, and you can see Arnett's like right there-ish, and here you can see a little overshooting top. If we go back out and we go to the next day so we can get more satellite images, you can kind of see the storm's kind of moving off, and you can see the Greensburg complex start to take shape right here. Buffalo is right here, Greensburg is right around here, and Dodge City's over here.
Now notice, before you skip ahead, go back one. That storm's already split off. You can see another updraft tower to the south of that one that would eventually go to Greensburg.
Yep.
So this was a splitting supercell where the north split actually did the big tornado, I believe, right?
Yes, it was. Well, they were kind of two separate. They shared an anvil, but this was kind of the dying stages of the Arnett supercell, and this was the new cluster up here. So what happened was it came out of Buffalo, and it was kind of a mess of, it was maybe 2 or 3 updrafts. As they crossed the state line, congealed, one updraft took over, produced a tornado near protection, and then started producing multiple tornadoes and cycling through multiple updraft plumes and mesocyclones as it went through the night.
Yeah, if you go ahead one, you can see right there.
Yep.
Where there's 2 distinct towers overshooting tops. So that was probably a split right there.
And then here you can see the massive overshooting top on the Greensburg storm as it moves off to the north as it's getting dark. And this day, from a lot of standpoints, is interesting. Mainly, I think the biggest thing to take away from this is how chasing at night is not always a horrible thing if you're in, on the high plains, as rare as it is, chasing on the high plains at night isn't going to get you killed if you're aware and you're paying attention to what's going on, not only with the tornado in front of you, but if you have a storm like this, having 360-degree swivel view of what's going on, because there could be another tornado forming that you don't even notice back in the darkness. And it also kind of highlights why relying on mesoanalysis model data can burn you, because, the ruck was horribly off here. Greensburg is shown to be in this massive amount of, stable dry air moving east, and really, really high convective inhibition values right here in that deep, deep blue. And then
that right there kind of tells a story of how off, the ruck was, which, that was a big failure on the terms of the short-term weather models. Skip, you got anything to add before we really delve into this anymore? Maybe not.
Yeah, man. I think from a chasing standpoint, Northwest Oklahoma was absolutely the spot to be that day. And if you could forecast that, that's great. To me, that's that play further down the dry line where, it's a little bit more of a gamble for that isolated storm, but absolutely worth it. I would, if I did that day over, I would absolutely be down there in Northwest Oklahoma, and I'd probably not even try for Greensburg, because
I was going to ask, looking at the ruck, and if you were one of those people that studied the ruck while you're chasing, would you have even attempted to follow that storm thinking it's about to fly into some pretty heavy convective inhibition?
Yeah, yeah. It's difficult to say, especially because of how far the ruck was off. But if you're looking at the surface ops, I guess you could have accounted for that. Um, yeah, I mean, I actually wound up a lot further north that day. We wound up almost by the Nebraska border, and I think we were trying to play a little bit closer to the warm front up there. And I know a lot of veteran chasers got suckered north that day. Paul DuPage did. I think some veteran chasers from SBC. I think Roger and Rich Thompson were up chasing together that day, if I'm not mistaken. I think they went north too. But yeah, just a crazy day from a forecasting standpoint with the data being off. But I mean, man, if you could nail that Woodward area target, that to me is the ultimate catch that day.
Yep.
Yep,
And
definitely.
It's kind of a weird synoptic setup too. If you're looking at it, it's got you have your cold front, included front, your surface cyclones all the way back here in eastern Colorado, like all the way back here. And then you have your dry line kind of kinks out here and then kind of comes back down and sits through the eastern panhandle. But then your 65-degree isotherm is sitting right here on the dry line. Greensburg is probably right, here's Pratt, so it's probably somewhere like right on this line. And it was just a perfect setup for a violent tornado. I mean, if you're looking at this, some of these values that you're seeing, like the 0 to 3 Cape, which measures, the depth of instability available in the lowest levels, 160 joules per kilogram right here, this really dark kind of maroon color. That's huge, especially going late into the night when you'd expect, I mean, you'll have a ramp. The low-level jet played a huge part in this funneling moisture up and continuing to increase shear overnight and into the nighttime, or going into the nighttime hours. And then you just had it increased shear, so you had really high helicity values. 0 to 1, it was about somewhere between 240 to 280 meters squared per second squared, which is really high for 0 to 1 going. I mean, not unexpected considering that the warm front's kind of draped here and then the dry line's somewhere in there, but it was almost like a perfect bullseye. And conditions like that late in the day going into nighttime, I don't think have been seen on the high plains for a very long time, except for maybe April 14th, 2012, which was another big high-risk tornado outbreak day. But this was, it was a moderate. It was kind of not really unexpected to see a violent tornado, but to see a violent tornado that big going into a populated area after dark was really strange. And John Davies right up here really kind of points out how much of it took a perfect once every 5 years kind of setup to get this. I mean, the values down here are insane. You have, over 3,500 joules per kilogram mixed layer Cape, 205 meters squared per second squared of 0 to 1 storm relative helicity, really strong deep layer shear, 46 knots, and decently low LCLs going into the night. And I'm not sure if we'll see anything like this for a while, so long as that drought persists out there.
Yeah, and it's I'm pretty sure everyone knows this, but the following day, May 5th, was a high-risk day, and that was a big tornado outbreak in Kansas and Oklahoma, and pretty much all along the plains.
And those were really fast-moving storms too. And there's that really big tornado, I think, near Great Bend that was, like the catch of the day. And there was, there were tornadoes all up and down that line from Pratt all the way up to Great Bend. St. John's nearly took a hit. You can actually still see some of the marks of tornadoes out in the groves of trees near St. John's. It's a really interesting day that the same area got hit twice.
Yeah. Well, I recommend if you guys are out chasing and you guys end up in Greensburg, the best way to always help out Greensburg is just kind of invest in their local economy. Just kind of go check some stuff out, go buy some gas, go do whatever you can. It helps them out, not quite a bit. It's a little bit, but it does help them out. So, and they've done a great job. I mean, the town looks awesome now. I mean, it's a very modernized looking town, and they did a really great job rebuilding that town.
Yep, it's really kind of cool how they've turned to green energy, building green. better building standards, which is a real issue in a lot of the smaller towns. Like even in towns like Moore, building codes are usually a lot of times not even met, and it really has helped that bringing awareness to the fact that a lot of these houses that are built out there can't withstand anything higher than low end EF2 without getting some pretty serious damage done to them, and it kind of puts into perspective how important building to withstand at least like an EF3 to high-end EF3 is really important, especially even though there haven't been lots of violent tornadoes out there lately. It's still important to have that.
Yeah. Well, Skip, any other thoughts on this day before we move on?
Yeah, we can move on. I think if you're in the area or if you're a chaser, visiting the site, paying homage to it, I mean that's hallowed ground basically, and it's great to see the regrowth there. But there are still many open plots. There are side streets and whole neighborhoods there that are still just empty grass plots, and it's really sobering to see that. But yeah, let's move on to the next one.
All right, so the next day would be May 15, 2003. Another very interesting day in terms of the actual setup itself. As I said earlier, it was the last high risk that pretty much involved most of the Texas Panhandle. So we'll have James take it away from here.
All right, so yeah, as Marcus said, it was a big high risk day in the Panhandle. Actually, the high risk was over much of the eastern Panhandle and parts of far western Oklahoma on the prairie. You can see your 25% hatch tornado, 15% all the way up through the Panhandles and western Oklahoma. And this day was really kind of interesting. I think Marcus was telling me, a lot of chasers that stayed around Amarillo waiting for these storms that were supposed to fire off. It's kind of upslope terrain out here in New Mexico near Clovis. They got really screwed out of the probably best storm of the day up here in the far northwest corner of the Texas Panhandle near Stratford, Texas, where a cyclic supercell put down 2 tornadoes at the same time, and the second one was a really, really big wedge. But at the same time, there were also multiple storms that produced. There was this after dark storm that produced multiple tornadoes just off the Cap Rock, southeast Amarillo, and then going into western Oklahoma. But here you can see Stratford tornadoes right in this little blob of red dots, and then another storm further north produced a tornado in Guyman and moved off to the northeast into Kansas. And this day featured a absolutely beautiful synoptic setup. I mean, this was just perfect. This really, really deep low. It's kind of split off from the main branch here. You've got kind of a split flow thing going on over here on the western Conus, and this really deep upper level low is kind of moving through the 4 corners at 12Z with a strong westerly component to the mid-level flow, and then going down, kind of meh looking winds in the mid-levels, 850s were 20 knots out of the south, but really, really deep moisture pooling out here in the western Panhandle, up the Cap Rock and on the Llano Estacado. And
Okay, hiccup again. Before we get James back, I wanted to show you guys something real quick because I don't know if a lot of people really know this. There was a tornado that happened near I-40 near the town of Leela, Texas. And I'm sure you guys are going to notice just how similar this tornado path is to perhaps maybe the El Reno tornado, where it hooked a very, very sharp left towards the north. It's rare to see tornadoes like this, but they do happen. They've happened before. So El Reno was definitely not the first tornado to hook a hard left in this tornado path. Of course, that was a much stronger tornado than this one, but there was a lot of damage in Leela from this storm. But you can kind of see the NWS survey shows that really hard left that it took. And just for reference, I mean, there's Shamrock, Texas, so this is probably much further east of Amarillo. So just thought I'd show you guys that real quick.
Sorry, you guys hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay. So, sorry, I kind of got my computer kind of went on the fritz there. So what happened was you had really deep moisture pooling up here on top, like up the Cap Rock on the flat plains of the Llano Estacado, and kind of interesting to look at, out here, start of this day, this is at 13Z, so just after sunrise, you can see it's just getting light over here, and you still see darkness back up here. This entire area was socked in with stratus, really, really thick stratus. You can see breaks over here in the east, but over here, where the storms were going to be coming out of, was kind of, full of thicker mid-level clouds. But as the day went on and the dry line started moving east, you had first kind of round of convection go up under that stratus deck, and then suddenly it just starts clearing out, and the dry line starts moving east really at a really good clip. You can kind of see the mid-level dynamics are starting to move in, huff into the region, stronger mid-level winds, and then you've got your first hints of convection over here north of close to Tex line and the Oklahoma far western Oklahoma Panhandle and southeast Colorado. And these storms kind of move in and they just start multiplying, and finally you've got the Stratford storm tucked right in here in this northwest corner. You can kind of see a little overshooting top right here if we kind of zoom in. It's kind of got a decent looking updraft. I mean, these intervals were a little bit wispy, but other than that, this is a really healthy looking storm, and it produced a very big tornado out there in the middle of the northwest Texas Panhandle. And right here you can see it.
A lot of guys, I know a lot of guys that stuck in Amarillo, and you saw that there was a very deep Q field out there that day. So I can see why everyone was stuck around Amarillo. But the thing is, a lot of people don't realize how big the Panhandle somewhat is. It's about an hour drive from Amarillo. Well, actually more than an hour from Amarillo to Stratford. So if you were in Amarillo and you saw that storm go up and you didn't jump on it immediately, you were gonna miss out. So.
Yep, and it was quite the storm to behold. I mean, you have your first. This is the occluded mesocyclone over here with a little tornado still hanging out. And over here you can see the new meso, that big, really large bowl-looking lowering, and first hints of tornadoes starting to appear at the ground. You can see a little bit of dust being kicked up over here.
Yeah, that's about as low as you can see a funnel without calling it a tornado, I guess. But by that point, there's some sort of interaction with the ground, so you can safely call it a tornado.
Yep, right there you can see that vortex kind of pulling around the left side. This thing turned into a really big wedge, and this was, Jim Leonard's video, which in my opinion is probably one of the top, best videos of this entire event. And it's kind of hovering. It kind of takes a bit to fill in, but once it does, it is quite the sight. Kind of step forward.
Another thing, a lot of this tornado produced some really large hail. If you go watch Jim's video, they get caught in that hail, and it's pretty hairy scene. Yeah, that's Skip. What do you got to say about that?
That's pretty amazing. This is great. I mean, I haven't seen any of these videos in a long time. This footage right here is like that definition of just a grinder tornado. I mean, just the looks of it has that, like, it's just in there, just digging its claws into the earth and just marching along. So yeah, sorry.
Yeah, this really probably one of the big panhandle tornadoes I can remember, and it's in this great terrain. I mean, it's just wide open prairie right here. No trees, no nothing, just prairie grass. Not a lot to do damage to out here, and it's really kind of the ideal setup or a tornado that you'd want to get on, because there's just nothing for miles, and I'm not sure if, I guarantee you cell coverage has probably improved up there since then, but a few times I've chased the northwest or western panhandle, it's still got great cell coverage on Verizon or AT&T, and it's really a great place to chase. And it's kind of sad that we haven't had these really big high profile events out there in quite some time.
Yeah, on just a side note, yes, Verizon is completely covered the Texas Panhandle, except for down in the River Valley. You might have some trouble getting some reception, but Texas Panhandle and Oklahoma Panhandle are completely covered in data, so they are now awesome to chase again. I should say a lot easier to chase now that you have the data
Yeah, if only there was moisture.
there.
Yeah, so
Yeah, this was one of the last really good days. I mean, we've had several days here in the Panhandle that are considered good, but yeah, if you were on the storm, this would have easily made your year. I don't know if 2003 being much more of an active year than what I know of this storm. I'm sure there has been, but yeah, this was quite the storm, quite the sight to see. You can see just that big barrel, wall cloud just kind of all becoming a big cylinder. And yeah, right here they're repositioning. Pretty soon they're gonna once they get on the road, that's when they realize the hail's coming. Well, actually, right here they realize the hail's coming, so they're trying to back it up, and then the other tour van is behind them, kind of like blocking the views or blocking the way, so they just like drive in the ditch here, like yeah, whatever, just leave. But yeah, they just get caught in some pretty massive hail while they're trying to keep up with this storm. If I remember right, this highway does parallel. It goes from southwest to northeast, so
yeah, it
I believe the
does.
storm just paralleled that highway, so that would have just been perfect. And like you said, yeah, just there's nothing out there. I mean, there's farms here and there, but there's no towns really, and it's really flat. There's no hills. For the most part, the farm roads are pretty decent and they're well gridded. So yeah, this is really great territory to chase in. Yep, you got something to say? You were like about to claw your way into this monitor watching this.
Yeah, man, that's amazing. The beginning of May in 2003 was really, really active. I remember people calling it the 10 days of May. I think from May 3rd, or even from May 1st, was it? May 1st through May 10th was hopping pretty much everywhere across the plains. So this was a huge year in general.
Yeah, I think this one just stands out because I'm just biased towards the Panhandle. So
Yeah, like '03, '04, those were big classic years on the plains, and I don't think we've really gotten that since then, except for '07 and '10 a little bit. But
yep, we're hoping that 2015 makes a change. We got the whole slight El Nino coming in, so see what that does.
Yeah,
Did you have another video that day real quick, by the way?
I believe I'm not sure if if I put it on there. Let me see if I have it.
There's one I saw something.
Should stay. Yes, Steve
Yeah.
Miller again.
Yeah. This is the height of Steve Miller, Texas, reigning supreme. He did quite a bit of chasing, got a lot of good tornadoes here. And here's a good example. I mean, he's kind of far away, but you see this dirt road. He just plows right through it.
So I think he also found the only hill in the area.
Oh, did he?
Yeah,
Oh,
I think he kind of went down to that river. Yeah, he went down to the river valley.
yeah. This is that area is just awesome though. Yeah, I can't wait to chase back up there again. I think the last time I even chased in that area with a good potential for tornadoes, probably May 18th, 2010. We got some nighttime tornadoes out there by Stratford, but since then it's been pretty quiet.
I say in days like the Stratford day, it's kind of reminiscent of those those mid '90s tornadoes that you always saw from like all the vortex crews. Like the Allison tornado, and there you can see the other tornado as it's occluding off to the left. But it's kind of reminiscent, like the Allison tornado, the Dimmitt tornado, big panhandle days or big panhandle tornadoes that just aren't, they just don't happen anymore. Like they haven't happened since the drought started back in 2011.
I tell you what, if you're forecasting and you see 70 dew points in the Panhandle, doesn't matter if there's a big setup in your backyard. You just go to Texas. You won't regret it. You might, but for the most part, you probably won't. You can come visit me. I don't care. But yeah, I mean, you know, moisture is key, obviously, to most tornadoes, but when you get it this far up in elevation, it could really do some magical things. But look
Yeah.
at that. That's just awesome right there.
Yep. Yeah. The thing about this storm too, I think if you pull, I'm gonna pull up some radar images of it real quick. And, I mean, it's just absolutely massive tornado. I think it was the National Weather Service Amarillo that Marcus pointed me to. Had a really good write-up and it had a lot of good radar images of this. And here it is, May 15th tornado outbreak. And you can see here there are a bunch of. It's kind of a weird, wonky-looking setup. I mean, you had your surface trough right here, and then the dry line was kind of draped across, far eastern New Mexico, far western Texas Panhandle. But then,
yeah, right there, stay on that page because you could see. Look at that convergence on the moisture and dry line out there by Clovis. You have some really nice southwesterlies crashing in that dry line. So a lot of people got suckered into sticking around Amarillo, kind of hoping something breaks out in that area. And the moisture wasn't as good up north, so I think that's what turned people off. Because down south you got mid 60s, up there it's kind of low 60s. But in situations like that, if you see a weird wonky setup like that, when in doubt, play close to the surface line. That seems to be a good guess. As long as everything else is in order, if you don't know which target to pick, I would always pick close to the surface low, and that would have been a good payoff that day if I had chased that day and made that decision. So.
Yeah, and I think the warm front too is what threw a lot of people off. I think it's kind of objectively analyzed here, but it's a weird looking warm front basically. It's kind of, you expect it to.
Yeah, you see a lot of back winds on the north side of that warm front, so I believe that's probably why everyone wanted to stay around that area, just because of the really good back winds. But I mean, come on, I mean, you can see all the way up to the north that the winds are backed all the way up there.
Oh yeah, and then up here, it's 82 or 53 that decent sized tornado went through Guyman right here, and then Stratford's down. Stratford like right about here, right along this warm.
That's 75-62 is Stratford.
Right here.
Yes.
Yeah, so this warm front was kind of maybe a little bit further this way, so the storm probably was riding this boundary, coming off the dry line. Really, really backed winds. A little bit stronger winds probably too.
Well, what's the timestamp on that? Is that 21Z, I believe?
It is.
Okay. So maybe over time, that area in Diamond got kind of overtaken by that one front, or had a drape premiere. But
it kind of. I think what happened was this down here got reinforced by that early morning convection, so it kind of draped south, and then this slowly drug north, and then when that storm moved here off that kind of high country off to the west, started moving into deeper moisture that had been funneled up through here, and into really, strong low-level shear, which made for that extreme environment that allowed it to be a cyclic supercell.
I'm going to let everyone in on a little secret here. Go back to that real quick. I'm sorry.
Oh, you're fine.
Okay. Union County in New Mexico is very magical because of its altitude. And also, you have the Black Mesa just to the west where a lot of storms fire off. And they roll over Union County, and they look like nothing on radar because there's a huge radar gap there. But let me tell you guys something. There's probably quite a bit of unreported tornadoes out there just because there is a lot of open country with not a lot of roads. But, man, you guys need to go chase Union County. There's really pretty country up there, too. But I think that's one of those hidden gold mines that a lot of people don't really know about is just how crazy Union County gets. I swear, I'm sitting here in Amarillo every year, and about 10 times a year, I just see this little preset blob rolling through Union County, and I'm thinking, man, that thing's probably doing something, and I'm just sitting here. But, it's 2 hours away, and I'm just so lazy. And
yeah,
but,
I know that feeling. Yeah, it really is kind of interesting. Like out here, this text line somewhere in this area.
Yeah,
that area by text line gets big. It got big, beefy tornadoes there. There was always one setup out here, from like 07 all the way up through 2010 that was really good. And it really is. It's just kind of like if you play up here in southeast Colorado. I mean, here's Baca County and Campo's like right there. a lot of times if you play going into this higher terrain, the lower dew points will make up the terrain will make up for the lower dew points, and you'll decent shear. A lot of times the upper level dynamics will be a lot better because you're closer to the upper low, and it's just kind of interesting. I mean, if you play like, say if your surface low is right here, or a little bit over here, playing up here isn't bad. Down here is kind of a crapshoot, especially in the Panhandle earlier in the year, because you never know what you're going to get along the dry line. If it's just going to fire off 1 or 2 storms, but the shear will be too weak or their dynamics won't be good enough to support long-lived rotating updrafts. But up here, it's almost a sure bet going into April and early May that you'll have at least one good shot at a storm out here. And it's beautiful chase country, great roads. It's hard to miss. And just kind of segueing back into it, May 15th. This is the storm that produced the Stratford tornado. At this point, tornado is probably somewhere right in here. Might be the first tornado. And then later on, you can see it moves off up here and produces a tornado near Guyman.
Yeah, keep an eye further south in the Panhandle later that day, because you're going to see what's up. And then that storm out there, that's the storm I was talking about that went through Leela, produced a tornado out there. And that was, what time does that say, 1:57?
1:57 C, so just after dark.
Yeah.
It's kind of interesting, and that's what caused all these tornado reports out this way, and that kind of string of tornado reports going into these western Oklahoma counties right here. And
that's where a lot of people got burned, because they were waiting for the daytime stuff, and then when that didn't happen, they were forced to kind of just chase this. Well, right there you can see, what time is that? Okay, 0:58. So it's like a string of pearls, almost, right at sunset. So everyone was getting a little excited, but the only tornado they produced was pretty much right after dark.
Yep, right here.
Right there. Next one.
And that moved off, and then this produced, and it's just kind of one of those days that not a lot of people talk about, because a lot of people weren't around to chase that, or a lot of people that are around now weren't chasing then, or they didn't go out for this day, and it kind of gets lost in the shuffle of those big days. A lot of people remember, I think it was late June '03 was Manchester. It was a huge day. Everyone's seen that video. And there were a couple other big days, but May 15th is kind of forgotten, except among Panhandle groups and the people that were out, some of the chase tours that were out there, and it really is one of the great days on the high plains.
Yep. Skip, you got anything else for us there?
No, guys, I think you covered that one really well.
We tried.
All right, so moving ahead, Marcus, what do you got for us?
I don't know. What do we have? Okay, well, tomorrow is our first official episode of this, the Ghost Train. We will be on tomorrow with Skip. Shane Adams will hopefully show up. May or may not be intoxicated. Whatever, Shane. You want to come drunk? That's cool, bro. It makes for an awesome show. And then I believe Jeff Duda will also be with us tomorrow. Hopefully, I noticed I haven't got a message from him, but I have full faith that he will be here tomorrow. But we are going to be talking about our crappy, or maybe crappy, 2014 season, which I don't know how you guys fared, but I didn't like it. And we will be talking about our firsts in chasing. We'll talk about our first chase vehicle, tornado, bus, high risk, stuff like that. So hope you guys will join us tomorrow. And then we'll throw a little 2015 prediction. Of course, we're going to be extremely accurate and not wrong at all on our 2015 prediction.
We will use only the finest scientific methods to make our decisions. I just want you to know that in advance.
The biggest thing to remember is take us extremely seriously throughout this whole thing, and you'll do just fine.
Yeah, we are never wrong.
Never wrong, no. All of our decisions and opinions come from our gut, which is, of course, the most important tool in a storm chaser's, equipment. That and a really good sound system. I had a veteran chaser tell me one time that the best piece of equipment you could ever invest in is a good sound system. So Make sure you guys do that. Man, so many like beginner chasers are gonna hate us. I mean, whatever. You just follow our lead, and you're gonna become the next free Timmer. I promise you.
Shots fired.
Oh man, that's all right. He's not gonna watch this show. Come on.
Yeah.
But all right, guys. Well,
but his people will watch it.
Well, yeah. I mean, his people. I mean, I'm sorry. I forgot that the arms of TVN reaching to everybody. I'm sorry. I will apologize, and please don't ban me from chasing. That would make me very sad. All right, guys. Well, any final thoughts? I don't know if maybe we want to try this again sometime, or we'll just keep going with the show. Hopefully, once a week is what I'm hoping we can do the show, but I think we can pull it off. So.
Yeah, hopefully, having Jeff on will keep us a little bit more honest, because I think I said, so if you guys caught anything that I was saying that didn't make meteorological sense, you were probably correct. I was kind of I was tripping over my own thoughts. So if you guys see anything, please point it out to me. I don't want to look like an idiot in public. I want to know that I'm being an idiot. I don't want to just subliminally be acting like a goddamn idiot. So please let us know. Give us feedback. If you want us to do specific days, just watch chase footage. Let us know. I'd love to make a playlist or something for it. We can go through it, just kind of talk about it. If you have a really good video to offer, or even if it's not HD video or whatever video you have, please feel free to send it our way, and we'll use it. That's about it for me.
Send me your 9mm film. We'll figure it out. I'm sure Google will handle it. No problem.
Send us your potato. We will figure out how to work the potato.
I'm pretty sure I got a potato adapter in my PC. It's all good.
All right.
All right, guys. Well, if that's all from you, maybe we can end this on a good note. We can actually call this one a success.
I think we're good.
So, all right, guys. Well, thanks for watching. Like I said, we'll be on tomorrow, 7:30 p.m. Central Daylight Time. And tomorrow would be today, if you're watching this tomorrow, whatever, January 4th, 7:30 p.m. We'll be on live. Don't know how long. Hopefully not dragging on 3 hours, but hopefully not just 20 minutes, because I have too much fun doing this now. So we'll talk to you guys next time on The Ghost Train.